In this video, you will learn what a pivot table is and how to confidently build and use it. Knowing pivot tables is basically knowing data analysis, that they are often tested in job assessments. Without further ado, let's jump in. First, let's define it. A pivot table is a special table that helps you quickly summarize and organize a detailed table or tables in any way you want, without using formulas, and without changing the original table. It'll all make sense in the next few minutes. For example, here we have a detail of sales transactions. It has columns such as date, that is just the date of sale. Sales channel. Sales channel is nothing but the location of sale, like in-store, online, etc. The next columns are for the names of the products sold, the sales amount, and the name of the salesperson. First, it is always recommended to convert the range of cells, which in this case is just a list of sales transactions, into a table. This list of transactions is currently not a table. You will see what I mean in a second. To convert it into a table, click anywhere inside and go to the Insert tab in the ribbon. Then click the Table command. That opens this Create Table dialog box. In the dialog box, make sure the checkbox for My Table Has Headers is checked. Of course, first, make sure your table has headers. Then click OK. This range of cells is now converted to a table. How do you know? If you click anywhere inside, you will see the Table Design tab in the ribbon here. That is your true indication that it is actually a table. Now that we have our table set up, let's go ahead and create a pivot table for it. To do that, click anywhere in the table. Then go to the Insert tab in the ribbon. Click on the Pivot Table command. That will open the Pivot Table dialog box. Leave the default New Sheet checkbox selected, although you can change it to whatever you want. Then click OK. That automatically creates this new sheet, with just an empty placeholder on the left, and some tips to start building the pivot table. Once we start building the pivot table, this placeholder will disappear. To start building the pivot table, we must bring data from our original detail table, right? But we don't have to go back and forth. Excel creates a convenient pane on the right here, where you can access all you need from the original table. These field names, date, sales channel, all the way to salesperson represent the columns of the original table here. That is date, sales channel, all the way to salesperson. Now, let's start building our pivot table. For example, let's say you want to know the sales amount for each sales channel. That is, how much is sold online, how much is sold in-store, etc. All you have to do is drag this sale channel field from the top section here to the rows area. The rows area is used to vertically list whatever you want to show in the pivot table. Now, if you see the pivot table, each sales channel is listed vertically, which, in this case, are just 3 channels: in-store, online, and trade show. Next, what do you want to know about the sales channels? I want to know how much money each sales channel generated. All you need to do now is drag the sales amount field into the values area here. The values area here is used to show summarized number values. What does that mean? Well, if you click on this down arrow and select Value Field Settings, you can choose from different types of built-in calculations. Currently, Sum is selected. If you want, you can change that to Count, Average, Max, etc. I am leaving it as is, which is Sum, because I want to know the total sales for each sales channel. Now, notice the pivot table is showing us how much money each sales channel generated in total. Fantastic! If, or whenever, you want to easily remove fields from the pivot table, just drag them out. Like so. What makes pivot table a powerful tool is its flexibility. That is, you can build it in many different ways. For example, this time, if you want to know how much sales revenue each of the salespeople generated, just drag the salesperson field to the rows area and drag the sales amount field to the values area. Now, if you see the pivot table, it shows all the salespeople and how much each one generated in total. You can also add more fields to any area. For example, let's bring the products field to the rows area. If you look at the pivot table now, you see that total sales revenue generated by each salesperson broken down by product. If you want to see the reverse effect, that means total sales generated for each product, broken down by salesperson. You can easily do that by simply reordering the fields in the rows area here. Like so. Now you have the same data in a different structure. Great. Also, if you want, you can add a filter field here in the filters area by dragging any of the fields. For example, let's drag the date field and add it to the filter area here. Now, you have the date filter at the top of the pivot table where you can choose a date so that you can see only records for the dates you choose. When you want to see the full pivot table again, just go to the filter choices and select all. However, sometimes using the filter area is not flexible enough. For example, you cannot use the same field in both the filter area and the rows area at the same time. For example, currently, I have the salesperson field in the rows area. If I want to use that same field in the filter area, it is automatically removed from the rows area. Excel does that on purpose to avoid redundancy of functions. If you want to filter by the field that is already in the rows area, you have the option to use the filter button attached to the pivot table itself, where you can filter by the fields shown on the pivot table. In this case, either salesperson or product. To do that, expand the filter button and first choose the field to filter by, and then select what you want to see here. And here is your filtered result. Let's put it back to all. Now, if you like to enjoy a flexible and a more intuitive filtering tool, you can use a tool called Slicer. To use Slicer, click anywhere inside the pivot table and open the Pivot Table Analyze tab in the ribbon. Then find and click on Insert Slicer. It will open this dialog box. Unlike the other filter options we saw, here you can choose any field to slice or filter the pivot table by. Let's select the salesperson field. Now, you have this nice box to filter only the parts you want to see. If you click, for example, on Brittany here, the pivot table shows you everything related only to Brittany. To view data for more than one selection, more than one salesperson in this case, click on this list icon, and then select the salespeople you want to see. The pivot table then shows you the data only for those selected salespeople. Again, unlike the other filtering tools, you can always see what is filtered with no additional steps to expand drop-downs. You can also move it around. To remove the filter, just click on this filter icon, and you will see the full pivot table again. One more thing. If you notice, Excel automatically assigns a default heading name for each column in the pivot table. Sometimes, these default header names make little or no sense. You can change any or all of them by simply clicking inside the header and typing a name that makes more sense to you. For example, I'm renaming this column to Salesperson versus Product. Also, keep in mind that the pivot table does not automatically update if you make any changes on the underlying table. So, make it a habit to always go to the Pivot Table Analyze tab and click the Refresh button. Well, you've just learned one of Excel's most powerful tools. A little practice will make you even more confident. That was it for now. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.